Okay, today we're going to learn about operations with functions and fogging off. So here are the four main operation of function, which is pretty self-explanatory. So you have your multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So for the multiplication, you're just distributing it, x. So you have f of x times g of x, and then for division it's f of x divided by g of x, and then addition is f of x plus g of x, and then we have the subtraction, f of x minus g of x. So we're going to do some examples. So let's say you are given the function of f of x equals x minus 3 and g of x equals x squared minus x. So they want to know what is f plus g 2. So remember, all we got to do first is distribute it. So we're the 2, so f of 2, distribute it with f and g, so it's f of 2 plus g of 2. Okay, what this means is f of 2, all it means is we want to know, we're plugging in 2 into the function of f of x. And then we're plugging in, and then we add that, and then we add the function g of 2. So you're plugging 2 whatever the function of g is. So first let's figure out what is f of 2. So f of 2 is, all we're doing is plugging into the function of f of x. So wherever this x is, we plug in 2. So it's 2 minus 3 equals negative 1. And g of 2 equals, so you just plug in 2 into whatever into the x is, to the function of g of x. So it's 2 squared minus 2. So that gives you 4 minus 2, which gives you 2. So now this is just addition, so all we're doing is adding these two together. So f of 2 plus g of 2 is, what is f of 2? Negative 1. And then g of 2 is plus 2. And then that gives you 2 minus 1 is 1. So your final answer is f plus g of 2 equals 1. So we just plug it into the function, and then we just add the answers, and we got 1. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, let's do a multiplication one. So let's use the same function. We're using the same one. So the get function is f of x equals x minus 3, and g of x equals x squared minus x. Right? So they want to know is, what is f times, now this dark circle means multiplication. It's not fog or off yet, so it's f times g negative 1. So we have to distribute that negative 1. So it's f my negative 1, multiply that by g of negative 1. So like the last problem, we have to figure out what is f of negative 1. So f of negative 1 equals, here's f, right? Just plug in negative 1 to the x, so it's negative 1 minus 3 equals negative 4. And then g of negative 1 is, plug in negative 1 to the function of g of x, so it's negative 1 square minus 1 gives you, what's negative 1 square? 1. Oh wait, I messed up right here. So it's 1 square minus, I always get confused here, minus a negative 1, right? I always get confused. So you have a minus and a negative 1, because it's negative 1, because the original function of g of x is my x squared minus x. So if we do the math, that gives you 1. What's a minus? Minus and a negative is a positive, because equals, so that's 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? So g of negative 1 equals 2, right? And then so our final answer, so we have to multiply f of negative 1 times that by g of negative 1, right? So because this is multiplication. So this is f times g negative 1. So what is f of negative 1? Is negative 4. And then times that by g of negative 1, which is 2, which gives you negative 8. So your final answer is f of g negative 1 equals negative 8. Okay, so let's do another one, but this time it's a little bit trickier because we're doing instead of a number, we're doing a letter. So the same f of x and same of g of x, so f of x equals x minus 3 and g of x equals x squared minus x. So they want to know what is f times g of a. So simplify that, that equals f of a times of that by g of a. Okay, right? So first step, find f of a. So whatever the function f, we just plug it into a. So f of x equals x minus 3, so a is always into the x, so it's a minus 3. And then what is g of a? So g of x is x squared minus x, so we just plug in a into the function of g of x, so that's a squared minus a. And that gives you a squared minus a. Right? So the original problem is asking you what is f times g of a. So we have to multiply f of a and g of a. So we know f of a is a minus 3 and g of a is a squared minus a, and then all we gotta do is distribute, so that's a cubed minus a squared minus 3a squared plus a 3a. So we have all this, but now the next step is group like terms. So we have, let's see, we have an a squared here, a squared here. The biggest number is a cubed, so it's a cubed. And you have a negative a squared and a negative 3a squared, so that's a negative 4a squared. And then you have a positive 3a. So this is your final answer, f times g. See, it was a little bit trickier than the other one because the other ones we had to use numbers. So, yeah. Okay, so let's do the fog and Goff. So basically, fog means you're putting the function g, fog means you're putting the function of g into the function f. So you always want to start, just remember, always starting on the right side. So that's like really saying f of g of x, right? So you're putting the function g of x into the function f, right? Now, what about Goff? That's not the same thing as fog. Goff does not equal fog, right? So Goff is just almost the same thing, but remember what we said, it's always start on the right hand side, so it's g of f of x parentheses. So we're putting the function of f into the function f of x into the function of g. So that's how you got this. Okay, let's do an example. So let's say you have the function f of x equals x minus 2, and you have the function g of x equals square root of x, and then h of x equals 1 over x, right? So you have f of x equals x minus 2 and g of x equals square root of x, and then function h of x equals 1 over x. So what they want to know is what is fog, right? Right, they want to know what is fog. So remember we said fog is f of g of x into the function of f. So what we're doing is plugging the function g of x, which g of x is right here, square root of x, into the function of x minus 2. So you kind of have to do this mentally. So g of x, this is the square root of x, right? G of x is the square root of x. Put this into the function x minus 2, if that makes sense. I know it's hard to grasp, but you just have to mentally put it in. Putting fog and Goff is putting a function into another function. That's all it is. So see the square root of x? This goes over there, so it's square root of x minus 2. And that is what fog is, right? We're just putting the function g of x into the function of f. Okay, so What about H? H-O-G, hog. So we, that would be, right, H, here's the mathematical form, so it's H of G of X, 0, and then all you gotta do is plug in, whatever the function G into the function of H. So, we know that G is square root of X, so we just gotta plug in that into the function h of x, which is 1 over x. So h of g equals 1 over square root of x, because g of x equals square root of x, and then we just plug it into the h of x. I know it's not something you'll learn like immediately, but you just have to practice and you'll get it. Whoops, let's do another one. Let's use the same function. So we have f of x equals x minus 2. We're using the same one, so g of x equals square root of x, and then h of x equals 1 over x. Okay, so we want to know is what is FOF, f of f. So that's just saying FOF. That's really saying of the function f of x into x, right? So here's f of x. So it's kind of hard to understand. It's like putting f into f, right? So it's f of x is x minus 2, so it's x minus 2, and then you'll have, don't forget about that negative 2. I know it's hard to explain, but you just have to do the math. So it's, and if you simplify this, this is x, a minus 2, and a negative 2 is a what? Negative 4. So FOF is x minus 4. So here's the function f of x, and you're just putting it into the same function, so that's how you got x minus 4. Okay, what about, let's do some more. Let's say you're given the function f of x equals x minus 2, and then g of x equals square root of x, and then h of x equals 1 over x. Right? So what if we want to know what is h of g of f. So we want to know the function f into the function of g into the function of x. So let's start with this first. GOF, right? So GOF is, putting the function g, we're putting the function of f into the function of g. So that is g of f of x. Okay? Right? So where is f of x? F of x is this, x minus 2. So and then here's g. So put this into this. So it's really saying square root of x minus 2, right? And then whatever this answer is, you plug that into h. So it's h of square root of x minus 2. So So function of, here's h. So it's 1 over square root, the whole thing, x minus 2. So h of g of f equals 1 over square root of x minus 2. And that is your final answer. So remember, you just have to remember to always start on the right side. Let's do the same what about h of f of g? And we'll use the same problem, so f of x equals x minus 2 and g of x equals square root of x, and h of x equals 1 over x, right? So we're doing, oops, sorry, can't see. We're doing h of f of g. So whatever this one is, we have to always start on the right hand side. So we're putting the function g onto f. So that would be f of g of x parentheses. So whatever g of x, we put that into f of x. So it's square root of x minus 2. Whatever, right? And whatever that answer is, so the next step is plugging this into h. So it's h of square root of x minus 2. And that gives what, and h is 1 over x, so it's 1 over square root of x minus 2. So your final answer is h of f of g equals 1 over just the square root of x, not the whole thing, minus 2. Because like the last one was the whole thing, right? But this is just the square root of x. And that is your final answer. Whew. Okay. Since we did fog off, let's do some more examples. This one, we'll do an easier one. Okay, let's say you're given the function f of x equals, oh, I can't see. F of x equals square root of x, and then g of x equals 2x minus 1, and then h of x equals x squared, right? So let's first do fog of 5. So if you remember, this is not multiplication. What they're asking is, they want to know, they're putting 5 into the function of g of x, and whatever that answer is, you put that in the function of f. So it's really saying f of g of 5 parentheses. So first step, what is g of 5? So g of 5, we have g of x equals 2x minus 1. So g of 5 is 2 times 5 minus 1, and just simplify, that's 10 minus 1, which is 9. Okay, whatever this answer is, you plug that into the function f. So f of g of 5 is square root of 9, which is 3. Right? Because function of f of x is square root of x, and then we already know that g of 5 is 9, so it's just plugging it in, and so that's your final answer is just 3. Okay, what about let's do Goff of 5. They're not the same thing, right? So it's, when simplified, it's g of f of 5 parentheses. So what is f of 5? We're still using the same problem, so we're still using f of x equals this, g of x is that, and h of x is that. So f of 5 is f of 5 is whatever the function of f is. F of x is square root of x, so f of 5 is square root of 5, and then plug that into g of whatever that answer it is. You just plug it into g. So, and we know that g is 2x minus 1, right? No, I don't. No, I don't. No. No. So 2 of square root of 5 minus 1 and then so your final answer is g of f of 5 equals 2 root 5 minus 1, because it cannot be simplified. That's the simplest it can be simplified. So that is your final answer. And so yeah, I think you pretty much know how to do Fogg and Goff, right? Fogg and Goff. So you always start on the right. It's just putting a function into another function, and that's pretty much what you have to learn for this section.